Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So you guys asked and I figured it out, and yes, you can do butter ganache with dark chocolate. So I came up with this really unique, almost steampunk looking design. I wanted to do some origami. I have messed with origami in the past and I struggled a little bit with the ganache. So I thought this was the perfect way to give that a try. The key to this is to use good quality dark chocolate. You want to use the good quality, don't use the baking chips, don't do almond bark, it won't work out as well. And you're going to want to chop this into small pieces so that it melts a little faster. And I'm putting it in a glass bowl and I'm doing it over a double boiler, which is water in the bottom of your saucepan, not touching the bottom of your bowl, below that, and bring it to a boil or a simmer, so that it slowly melts your chocolate. And I added the butter to make it the butter ganache. And I will link put the recipe in the description box for how you can make this. It's very simple. And I'm using Color Mill Black to color it black. And using a dark chocolate as your base is a great place to start if you want a dark color. It would take a lot of food coloring to get white chocolate that color. So I wouldn't suggest doing that. And my top tier is an already crumb coated with ganache 6-inch cake. This is a small one. And I'm just using the hot, I let it cool a little bit, butter ganache. I'm just pouring it over the top and letting it drip down the side. Now my cake had been chilled, and if it hadn't been chilled, it probably would have gone down those sides a little smoother. But since it didn't, I just used my my scraper to smooth out those sides. And I put it in the refrigerator to chill and set up while I worked on the bottom. And since I'm gonna do the origami on this bottom, I just wanted to get a base coating of the ganache, because ganache sticks best, in my opinion, sticks best to ganache. So if you were to attach this to buttercream, I'm not sure you'd be able to pull the paper of the origami off without pulling that chocolate right off also. So start with a ganache base, basically a ganache crumb coat, and chill that also. And we're gonna make our origami. I'm using freezer paper and cardstock paper. I'm cutting it to the size. Now I had measured the height and the circumference of the cake and made a good guesstimation on how many pieces I was gonna need. Now I would say at least double, maybe 1.5 times the width of what you measure the cake. Because when you fold this, it's going to take your length down quite a bit by about 1.5 times. And then I'm just cutting out the the freezer paper. You could use parchment. I had freezer paper and I wanted to use it up. So basically the same principle. Cut it to the same size as your cardstock. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use double-sided tape and attach the freezer paper or parchment paper, if that's what you have, to your cardstock. It's just a little bit more of a safety net for me since I had not done this before with the butter ganache. I wanted to make sure that paper would pull off. Now I know other people have used just cardstock paper or just even printing paper to do this, but this was my first go at it, so I wanted to make sure I got it done the first time right. So I used the reinforcement, and I'm just using my ruler to help me fold the paper. I had used my mat there that has the measurements on it, to mark every 1/2 inch on both sides of the paper. And that's what I'm lining my ruler up with so that I get even lines straight across. I do this across all of your pieces. I'm only showing you the one piece because you get the point. This is what I did repeatedly. And once you get those initial folds in there, go ahead and accordion fold the entire piece of paper. Now this is thicker since you have the cardstock and the parchment or your freezer paper. So just make sure that you get those creases nice and sharp. And it's very rigid, perfectly rigid. A little harder to fold, but it's perfectly rigid. And I have these 2 pieces of wood that I like to use in between when I'm doing chocolate to keep kind of the chocolate confined where I want it. Those are just kind of anchors. They're just gonna help me. And I have the chocolate in the bag, and I just cut the tip, and I am piping it into the folds first. And do that with all of your pieces. Now once you get it piped in all of your folds, go ahead and top it off with some more chocolate. Now my little helpful hint here is when you're doing origami on your cake with chocolate, don't scrape your chocolate down to the parchment paper or your paper, whatever you're using to attach this to your cake. Because if you scrape that chocolate off of that fold mark, see on the one on the left where you can see the white through? I fill that in because if you don't leave a little bit of chocolate there, when you go to pull your paper off, you end up accidentally pulling some of the chocolate off of the cake also. It's just a better adhesion. And I'm just removing the excess from the top and the bottom and in between those pieces of folded paper where the different sections are. Because you're going to attach, when you attach these, you're going to want those pieces clean because that's how you're going to make your continuous pattern around the cake. Now I let this set. I had actually not even started piping this until it was slightly cooled down. Because if your chocolate is too runny, it's not going to stay in the mold where you want it, and it's going to be really hard to transfer it onto your cake. You're going to have to wait a lot longer if it's too thin. And once I got that in there, I left it for a couple minutes more so that when I lifted up onto the cake, it did not run out the bottom. This worked out great, guys. This is way better than using a cream-based ganache for this type of technique. And it has a much better mouthfeel to it also, I feel. It's a little smoother. I really like the butter ganache. And what I'm doing there is I'm taking those two pieces, the end pieces, and pressing them together so that you have a continuous pattern around your cake. And that's why I told you to make sure you scrape off that extra. And then I just use my scraper to push those corners against the cake a little tighter. Now I had guesstimated pretty close to what I needed, but I needed one extra little piece. So I just cut down that smaller piece to the size where it's gonna fit in. And again, reinforcing all of those corners with my fingers. And then you're gonna put that in your freezer for about an hour. It does not take very long to firm up. It really doesn't. Compared to regular ganache with cream, it could be an overnight and still not be set up. So highly recommend the butter ganache. And for the decorations, I'm just using black fondant and I'm adding some Tylose powder to it so that it becomes more of a gum paste, which dries firmer, faster. And I'm just working that in. I'm gonna roll this into a log and then flatten it with our smaller rolling pin to about 1/8 of an inch thickness. And I'm using this handy dandy little Wilton tool to cut the strips. If you don't have that, you can just go ahead and use your ruler and a straight blade, a sharp blade, and cut it into strips. And I just brushed a little water on there and I'm just spiraling it up. This is a really super simple geometric cake decoration that did not take long at all. And I did different varying sizes, just for a little bit of extra interest. Now the gold finish I wanted to add to these, I didn't want the entire thing to be covered. I wanted to hit the high points of this spiral. So I'm just using this clay tool to reinforce the ridges around it, deepening those. And then I'm just using the gold luster dust mixed with some everclear and a bigger brush, and I'm just holding my brush to the side and just kind of hitting those high points. It's just kind of a little bit of an aged look. And here I tried this for the first time. Why not? Doing a video is a perfect time to do an experiment, right? So I'm just using some of the piping gel gold luster dust mixture that I put in a past video that I'll try to remember to add a link here. And I'm using that just over the top of my ganached cake. I'm just using the brush and I'm using my mesh stencil. I would not recommend doing this with a plastic stencil. Mesh is the way to go. And it worked out perfect. So it doesn't have to be buttercream and it doesn't have to be fondant. You can do this on ganache. And to use up the rest of the chocolate, I thought I'd make some flags out of it. Now, in hindsight, since of course this is an experiment too, I would not recommend using the butter ganache as a flag just because it's not rigid enough. I would suggest using just straight chocolate, melted chocolate, or do candy melts. But you know, you get the idea. You would do the same technique with any of those other mediums. I mean, this worked, but it wouldn't hold its shape very well. Now, I'm just using these to form the shape. Use what you have. You don't always have to buy tools. Use what you have. And just forming it into a shape that I thought was interesting. I'm just using pins to lock it into place there. And then I put these in the freezer once I had them in place where the shape I wanted. I put them in the freezer for another good, half hour to an hour. And now that our origami is set, all you have to do is slowly release the paper from the ganache. It worked out great. And I didn't even have any seams that I was worried about filling in. It was pretty good the way it was. And I'm just using this clay cutting tool to cut off the excess off of the top. You can use any kind of a sharp, thin blade that you prefer. And this is where I'm upset, guys. Magically, the cake is put together. What do you know? It's a miracle. No, what it is I thought I was filming and I wasn't. So, I so apologize for that. I will put links to other videos where I am assembling the cake. It's the same technique. I'm using bubble tea straws to support the top tier. I used 4. Add some more of that chocolate in between the 2 tiers. Attach your top tier, and then I attach all my decorations with some more of that butter ganache. And this is the finished product. I am so sorry that footage is gone, but I could not waste the footage. I also added some of that gold paint to touch the high points on the origami. Since black is a dark background, I wanted to highlight the highs and the lows of the origami. So I hope you liked it. I hope you don't hold it against me that I don't have that footage. I'm so very sorry. I hope you give this a try. Everything else that you need is in the video. And if you do anything like this, please send it to me on Instagram. I'd love to see your work. Thanks for watching, guys. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my video. And if you'd like to watch some other videos, go ahead and click on the link to one of these other videos shown here. And if you would like to check out my other social media, I am on Facebook and Instagram under the same name, Sophisticakes by Mary. And please take the time to share, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when I upload another video. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next tutorial.